Okay, in this video I'm going to discuss a couple of the circuits. We're going to do the reversing polarity circuit over here and then the voltage reading. So that we do with that right there. So you can see here, if I press in it turns green, if I press out it turns red. So that's a reversing polarity LED. So you can hook it up either way, it just changes the color. And then our voltage reading displays here, and it's done through that voltage divider there. So we'll go through like I normally do. We'll do a diagram discussion and then I'll put them together. Okay, so in this diagram we're doing the reversing polarity relays. These won't necessarily be the relays I would be using in a real world project, just to proof of concept. So this is just like the other video we just did. So this is our Teensy, and we have our plus 5 volt and ground will be coming in here. And then I did change this so the 3 volt goes directly to the level shifter instead of to the rail. I'm using the rail as 12 volt. And then 28 and 29 are going to our TX and RX on the level shifter. And so from your nextion, your RX from the nextion would be going to TX. All right, so transmit and receive. So that's how those would be connected. And then our output pins, and I'm actually have 2 of these circuit setups, but I'm just showing you one. So in this particular one, the pins are 34 and 35. So when one button is pushed, it would activate 34 and the other button would activate 35. And then those go through 1K resistor to our transistor. And then here you can see I'm just sharing the ground here on the transistor just to save space, right? So then when one of these pins is activated, it would trigger one of these relays. And so the relays, the common is going out to our load. So on one we have a resistor through it. So either way the resistor is going to limit the current. And here we're using an LED, but we could be using a motor or whatever we want to reverse the polarity. So that LED that I'm using on there is a reversing polarity LED, so it's red one way and green the other way. And what happens is that from the rail we're supplying 12 volt here and ground here. Well, right now with these just sitting here, the ground is connected to that common post. But when we change the state of one of them, this would then change over to 12 volt. So then we would be supplying 12 volt to this side of our load. And this side would stay ground. So it would stay like that. Okay. And then, so it would be the opposite if we did this one. This side would become our positive. This side stays ground. And then we also have our flyback diodes going across the coil of the relays. So as you can see here, so flyback diodes are transistors or resistors, 1K resistors. And then that's what we'll do next. We'll put this together next. We also are connecting both sides of the rails through the ground. Okay, we're gonna wire this thing up. This is kind of redundant from the previous videos, but I won't be showing this part in the next videos. But we're gonna hook up power to the Teensy. So here we're connecting the plus and minus voltage for the 5 volt rail. So there's a close-up of it there. And this is the level shifter. This is what allows the 5 volt nextion communicate with the 3 volt Teensy. And so here we're connecting the high voltage side, so our 5 volt side. So our plus and our minus on the high voltage side. There's a close-up of it. And here I'm connecting the low voltage side, which is the 3 volt. So we're going from the 3 volt pin on the Teensy to the LV pin on the level shifter. And then while we're on this side, I'm going to go ahead and connect the TX and RX. And then we'll connect the ground to the low voltage side. So the next thing, we'll put in the relays. So on the right hand side there, that's the coil. The other side is the contacts. So I'm going to face the coils towards each other so I can save some space when I put the transistors in. So you can see the coils are facing each other. Okay, so now I'm going to install the transistors, and I'm kind of reversing them from one another so I can share the leg for the emitter in the same row. And here I'm putting in the flyback diodes. So the stripe side goes towards the positive side of the coil. And then this is where I'm connecting the negative to feed the transistors. So you can see that's a negative all in the same row. Now we're putting in 1K resistors to the base of each transistor. So I got to be careful to get those exactly right. Now this jumper is what's going to supply power to those resistors. So one pin's for in, one pin's for out. I'm just inspecting it there. So we'll show a close-up here so you can see that one row. They're sharing the emitter. Then the base is going to one side of a resistor. Then the other side of a resistor goes to a jumper wire on each one of those circuits. Then you can see the flyback diodes, the stripes going towards the positive side of the coil. So the transistor side of the coil is going to supply the ground signal to the coil to move the relay. And here's a close-up of the pins and the jumper wires. So now we're going to connect. This one is positive for the coil, not for the coil, for the contacts. This is the negative. And I'll show this a little bit better here coming up. That's positive for a coil of one of the relays. That's a positive for the contacts. That's another ground for the other side of that contact. And that's the other positive for the coil. So it's always got positive there, and we're switching the ground side. Here's the close-up of it. So you can see the relays pulled out there, and you can see the actual pins. So the one in the very centers are common. That's what's going to send power out to our load. And there's the same thing just with the other relay. So this relay, the common, has the resistor in it. So no matter which way we turn this thing on, we're still restricting the current with the resistor. So now here we're actually installing the resistor in the jumper wire. And then there's the LED. You can put that in either way. So you can see one end goes to the jumper, the other end goes to the resistor. Now I'm connecting up the nextion display. So it takes 5-volt power. There's the converter I'm using. So that's got 5-volt power on it. So we're feeding 5-volt power to the top rail and 12-volt power to the bottom rail. Now you can see I turned it on and the light came on. It's not supposed to do that. So I had to do a little diagnosing, and what I found out was that I had grabbed an old transistor that I had probably fried in an earlier project and installed it. So I put a new transistor in and that fixed it. So now you see when I push the button, it changes color, turns on and off. And then, as I like to do, I just check the voltages throughout the board there so you can see the 5-volt rail. That's the 12-volt rail. There's your 3-volt coming out of the Teensy. Then we can see what kind of voltage goes through there when we push the button. So we have 0 there because that's the ground side. There's 2 volts going to the LED because we have the resistor there. Then you can see we have 12 volts because we reversed the polarity, 13 volts. Okay, in this we're going to discuss how we're getting that number right there. That's our voltage reading off the battery. This is the diagram I made up. The same Teensy, same 3-volt level shifter, all that's the same. What we're reading on this is pin 26. And the way we're getting a reading from that is the center tap here from a 12K and a 47K resistor. The 12K is going to ground on the other end, and this is going to our positive 12 volts. And then we have a 104 capacitor here to keep everything steady. So a little bit easier circuit than the other ones we've done. Okay, all this is the same as we did in the last few videos. We're going to put a 12K resistor here. And this is a 47K. So you can see one end meets right here. Then this one's going to get the negative ground side of our 12 volt. This one's going to get the positive side of the 12 volt. And our capacitor goes between ground and this junction part there of the resistors. And then this goes to pin 26. Okay, so same thing here. We're going to connect the nextion back up. Power goes on the 5-volt rail. Then we're going to connect the 5-volt power to the rail, and then I connected another converter to the 12-volt side so we could adjust the 12 volts so you can see the voltages change. Okay, so we have all the power hooked up, our 5-volt or 12-volt, our nextion's connected. And then I've got a little buck converter here so I can show you the voltage. So it's changed. Usually I have it hooked directly to 12-volt lithium battery. But you can see here as I drop the voltage on the buck converter, it changes. And now we'll compare it to the meter here. Once again, you can see there's our 5-volt side, there's our 3-volt, there's our 12-volt, so you can see it's 12, 5, and as we lower it, you can see it matches. So it's a pretty accurate voltage reading, that voltage divider. Okay, so that's those two circuits. Hopefully I'll have the next one ready by the time this one comes out. And then I'll leave some links in the description for the code I used and the diagrams I drew, some of the parts, some other videos, stuff like that. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.